Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Tech in Tech, a show where we talk about technology, education, and everything in between. Our guest for today is Sunil Gunderia. Sunil is the Chief Innovation Officer at Age of Learning, well known for ABC Mouse, the creators of ABC Mouse, and many other products. I'm very excited to have Sunil on the show because of three things: early learning, evidence, and AI. And we'll dive into all of these three topics. Thank you, Sunil, for joining the show. Welcome to the show.
Dipesh, thank you for having us. I'm really excited to be here to talk about what we do at Age of Learning and the opportunity we have to really make a difference in the lives of children and students everywhere.
Thank you. And Sunil, I'm connected with you on LinkedIn. So when I looked at your profile, I love that you spoke so much about evidence because I think that's a gap that I see in the current industry. So we'll definitely go dive into evidence. We'll of course dive into AI. That's one thing that everyone is talking about. Everyone wants to learn more about. And I'm personally very excited because I have two kids, a 5-year-old and 1-year old, and early childhood education and how AI intersects with that is going to be very, very exciting for me, and I'm sure a lot of our audience. Before we dive into all of these meaty topics, I would love for you to give a little bit of background about yourself, how you got to where you got to, and talk about your journey in EdTech.
Absolutely happy to share my background. So I got here in a indirect way in that I started my career in finance and accounting, really following in the footsteps of my father. I'm a first generation immigrant here to the U.S. from India, and didn't know better when I was growing up of all the opportunities that existed with entrepreneurship and an opportunity to really make a difference and do meaningful work. I really discovered that first, the opportunity in technology working for Disney, which I did for 11 years, both here in the US and in Europe, where I was responsible for working on new mobile platforms like devices that and bringing Disney content there. I left Disney and saw the opportunity and how kids were really engaged with content on mobile devices. And the interface worked really well. And I was looking for opportunities with technology and education, and was fortunate to find Age of Learning, which had launched ABC Mouse. I was the first executive hire to the Age of Learning team that was not on the founding team. And I was brought in because of my mobile expertise, my international expertise, and my understanding of mobile interfaces. I quickly took on the chief strategy officer role, and then to my current role where I'm now as chief innovation officer. I spent 11 years at the company and have been really fortunate to drive the development and distribution of products that are really impactful in the lives of students. And you mentioned outcomes and efficacy, and we have a lot of evidence to tell you that our products are going to drive favorable outcomes for kids, both our legacy product that I believe you have used with your child, ABC Mouse, as well as our new products that we've developed for the classroom, My Math Academy and My Reading Academy.
That's great. Exciting journey, Sunil. It's very interesting to see how from Disney to education and how that, what do you call it? The core concepts of gamifying, how do you bring it to educational ecosystem? And I think that's very, very exciting. So I have two questions for you, and you can order in the order that you would like to. One is it's a burning question for a lot of us is how do you there's the emergence of AI. There's definitely AI is on the rise, but when you combine it with early childhood learning or early education, how do you merge both of those? I mean, there's a lot of application of AI as you grow up, but when you talk about kids of young age group, how do you do that? That's question number one. Question number two is, which is personally the reason why I chose ABC Mouse, is your focus on evidence and impact, because I think parents are very wary about screen time. So you want to choose products that you know are going to be great for your kids and they have evidence attached. So how do you merge this evidence and how do you measure evidence of AI in the learning products? So I hope you got both the questions. Would you like to answer First, second, or whichever that you prefer.
Let me start with the questions around ABC Mouse, and that is a platform that we have developed, and really because it is the story of the company, is through ABC Mouse. What we learned about is how to create a product that both meets the needs of parents and the needs of students. And the way we've done that is by making learning, which it is, very engaging for the child, and through the results that we can get for students that have been proven by evidence, effective for parents. And really, that allowed us to build a lot of trust early on in terms of how do we merge the joy of learning with a digital product and gain the trust of parents through that. And we invested in creating something that you've seen with your own child that they really love to do. And as we all know, learning is quite fun. And unfortunately, what ends up happening is that when we go to school, because of certain measurements that are put around it, we take a lot of the fun out of learning, yeah, inadvertently, which is really natural and intrinsic to us. And in terms of the question around AI, what is essential to develop effective systems that use AI are data, domain data, specifically on what a student is doing, what is motivating their learning, and how are we measuring the impact of our solution. And you'll hear this talked about a lot with AI. It's more than technology. It is not simply the large language model alone. It's large language model combined with domain expertise and data on actually what is happening during a process. And it's specific to our process is what is happening during learning. And that is something that we've really built upon. And our research bears it out in terms of ABC Mouse, in terms of how effective of a product it has been and continues to be for parents as well as the young learners that use it. We then applied what we learned from ABC Mouse when we developed our products for school, My Math Academy and My Reading Academy, knowing that collecting the data on reading and math and how that happens and what's required to get a child from no knowledge in the subject area like reading and math to a skill like being able to read fluently, or in math being able to count at a second grade level, which is where our products go through right now, is the ability to add and subtract 3-digit numbers is where we get to as our penultimate skill for math. We have to then backward design every single element of learning into a knowledge map that really provides a scope and sequence of the knowledge that a child needs to acquire as they go from no skill to our penultimate skills in both reading and math, and then creating a data structure that allows us to capture every click that a child is making in that journey, as well as being able to measure what they're learning through things like evidence-centered design. So we've designed our products, My Math Academy and My Reading Academy, not only to collect clicks, but actually to collect what's happening inside a child's head, which is what are they learning and how do we know they're learning? And that was really essential into our design. And what that enables us to do is now, as AI features become more accessible, we're able to connect that data to not only make the learning better for the child, but also to inform the teacher and the parent with what's happening in real time in terms of learning for each student.
That's amazing. What you just told is actually kind of I mean, it's very interesting your journey from a B2C product to a B2B product. And right now, you probably laid out the groundwork you did to make that journey possible, from being a B2C product, getting the knowledge and experience that you got from there and applying that to a B2B, which is more school-based product. And I think that's very interesting. Do you want to talk a little bit more about how you went through that journey from ABC Mouse to My Reading Academy and My Math Academy? How was that journey for you personally?
The journey, and it was a team journey led by a underlying truth that is very unfortunate for us in the U.S. and it is exists in countries across the world is that our systems currently are not getting the majority of our students to proficiency in math and reading. And you look at the National Assessment for Educational Progress, the NAEP scores, which is known as our national report card. Fourth grade students, over 60% of our fourth grade students are not proficient in math and reading. And if you
Wow.
look at what it is for our low income students, which represent our low income students represent 50% of our kids in public education in the US, nearly 80% of those students are not proficient in math or reading. And the impact on students' lives, the lives of those in their community, as well as the broader economic impact for our country is pretty severe, especially in a world that is being changed so rapidly by technology and AI. And that's really the origin story for my math and my reading academy and why we started the research and development process back in 2015. We knew, with the success we had built in ABC Mouse and the understanding of students that we could work together if we brought together the right team of experts to really tackle and solve this problem. And that is really the origin story for why we're doing what we're doing. And to do that, let me talk a little bit about the team that it took to put that together. I talked a little bit about the idea of knowledge maps and backward designing,
Right.
knowing we had inputs, right, or endpoints. We wanted to get a child through second grade, which was the ability to read proficiently, and for math to being able to add and subtract three-digit numbers. So we needed master educators that really could unpack standards and understood all the steps that it takes to get a child from no knowledge to those endpoints. We needed design research because one of the things that we learned through this process is that although all of us have been young at one point, we are no longer young. We're certainly not 4 or 5 years old, and we needed to bring them in to test that our interfaces work for them, that they were developmentally appropriate, and nothing better as a test of truth than to get feedback from a 5-year-old who tells you exactly what's on their mind in terms of your product. And so that was a really important part of the product. And then understanding through the learning scientists and learning sciences. And this is really fundamental. You mentioned game-based systems, which we've used. What we wanted to do there was to ensure that we were applying, the best in behavioral science in terms of how we motivate learning, the best in the learning sciences or cognitive sciences in terms of how we as humans learn and our memory works. And the third pillar of this in terms of the learning sciences was learning analytics. How do we measure learning? How do we know learning is happening? And what are our bases for that? So I'm going to point out a couple of researchers that really, or a few researchers that really informed our work. They're Benjamin Bloom, who talks about the two sigma problem, and effectively, to simplify it, is basically that a mastery-based learning system using one-to-one tutor is the most effective way to learn. And actually, if you can do that, it has two standard deviations better results than your standard teaching methodologies. So, goal one of ours was how do we replicate that with a technology platform, knowing that one-to-one tutoring is difficult to scale. Number two would have been Vygotsky, and really understanding from a motivation perspective, placing a child in front of what they're ready to learn next is really important. And what that requires is you have to understand what a child already knows and is ready to learn next, and then present that content. So, and that's exactly what our system does with the knowledge map. We start with an assessment that determines where a child is in their learning journey, and then we serve them up the instructional content they need next. And the third researcher I would point out is Bob Mislevy, and his work on evidence-centered design motivated us to look at how we determine how learning actually happens. So effectively, our games in our programs act as assessments so that we know that a child has learned or not learned something before we move them forward. So we can show mastery, just as I mentioned with Bloom as part of his system, that we can show that so that each child has their own individual learning trajectory based on the knowledge they're gaining through our system.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, just a note for the audience, it just goes to show how much what and all goes into creating these learning products that students use on a daily basis. And it's amazing to see the amount of research and evidence and the right kind of people that you've taken to get to this journey. One thing that I noted here and also in what you've said, I think we talk about students, we talk about teachers, and rightly so. We don't talk a lot about parents. In one of your episodes, Sunil, I remember you mentioned that your product send notifications or nudges that your kid has learned to count like up to 20. I mean, as a parent, that's such a great news for me. I would like to, if you could elaborate a little bit more about on how you support parents and teachers and how you enable them. I think audience would really like to hear that.
So the way we do this is the system that I described to you is something we've patented. It's called our personalized mastery learning system. And as we explored that system and we thought about Bloom's Two Sigma and the objects of change, and Bloom describes objects of change and those things that have effect on learning. And one of those systems are the actual learning materials and the student themselves and how they're thinking about their learning. And then the other two are your home environment and your teachers. And
Mm.
so based on that, we developed something that we've written about several times called a personalized mastery learning ecosystem. So our as the student interacts with our program, we are recording, as I mentioned, every click. Approximately in a classroom, 100 clicks every minute are being met are being we're getting telemetry on from a classroom, and this is at the individual student level. We are now able to track for in the classroom for the case of the teacher, which is very important part of this ecosystem of learning. We are able to provide them real-time data of not only what a child is working on, but also if they're struggling, if they're moving forward as needed, and of course if they're struggling, we suggest that a teacher may want to intervene and provide, and we actually even provide the teacher material for them to use with a student that might be struggling. If a student is doing well, we provide them material on the teacher material on how to transfer that knowledge for things that they've learned on our platform to other scenarios that might exist so that they can see that the applied understanding of that knowledge exists. And for as you think about the parent piece of this, it was really important for us. The parent tends to be the most underutilized resource in learning, and a lot of times it's because parents themselves worry that they're going to mess up what the child is learning in the classroom. So the way we approach this is like, let's simplify this. Let's reduce some of the anxiety that parents face around teaching or helping be a coach to their child and making mistakes by one, ensuring that we provide data that tells them this is what your child is learning. And as they're learning, let's help them provide the encouragement to their child. As a parent, and you have young kids, so you know this really well. You tend to be nervous about your own child and their academic achievement because everybody's around you is telling you how their 3-year-old can read, and their 4-year-old is now doing advanced calculus. The
Yes.
reality is
Yes, absolutely.
the reality is that every child, especially at this age, needs to be encouraged based on where they are. And developmentally, kids at this age are very different. And so one of the things we encourage the parent to do is celebrate your child's learning as it happens. One of the things that's going to do is really give the child a feeling of like, wow, not only does my teacher know what I'm learning, but my parent does, and they care about it, and it's important to them. And when I learn something new, they're there to celebrate it with me, and it's important to them. And then, of course, we provide opportunities and examples of how a parent can provide support so that whatever learning that they did in the classroom and what they've learned, the parent can say, look, and you mentioned the example of counting to 20, that, hey, why don't you do that with me? And when you do that with me, say, wow, that's an amazing job. Or when you're out in the car or in the grocery store, hey, let's count to 20 together. I know you've just learned this. So it reinforces the parents' engagement, and it also allows the child to see that the learning that they've done in their classroom is applicable to the world around them, and it helps them understand that world better. And this is what creates a really solid ecosystem for learning, where there and makes the learning less about this is something that happens in the classroom where I'm graded on it, and more about this is important to my life and what's around me, and everybody in it that cares about me cares about what I'm learning.
This is amazing. The first thing that I'm going to do after I go home, Sunil, today is I'm going to celebrate my child's learning. I think we acknowledge it, but I've not really, the way you said it, it just made so much sense. That each child is on its own journey, and you have to take care of that journey, and rather than trying to enforce something that's not a part of the journey. So that's amazing. I'll just ask one question before I move to a broader topic. Is when you spoke about teacher tools and teacher analytics, I think one, how do you make sure that teachers get the relevant data and are not overwhelmed by a lot of data and dashboards? Because it just sees so many data points. So what is that? How do you do that?
In the same way we would design for a student, we've designed for teachers. And one of the certificates we recently earned from Digital Promise, which is a 501c3 nonprofit here in the U.S. that was created by the government to help promote better instructional practice, is a teacher informed certificate that we've actually brought teachers in to our development process, not only for the student experience, but for their own experience with our dashboards. And so what I'm talking about is the same. The design research, you spend time with teachers and say, look, here's our dashboards. How can we make this the most relevant to you so that you can not only understand where everyone in your classroom is, but also how you can use it to better differentiate your instruction. You bring your users into in your development process, and that is really quite key to ensuring that you're going to optimize usage of things like dashboards.
Great. So, thank you for providing this. Take a few steps back and I move to a question on AI. I think you work with a lot of institutes. So, what I want to understand is a lot of institutes are definitely have the intent to adopt AI and are in the process of doing that. What are some of your ground experience? What have you seen when it comes to institutes adopting AI or adaptive learning? And what are some of the challenges that they face when they do that?
What has been encouraging is the speed at which districts and governments are looking at AI as a solution. And I think a lot of this has been driven by the needs of the workforce and what's going to be changing with AI. McKinsey recently put out a report that expects 30% of what we do at work to change within the next by 2030, that it won't be needed anymore because AI can handle it. And in some professions, it may be a lot more. And I do think that with interfaces like Claude, Chat GPT, and that we've surfaced a natural language interface to use AI. The power of AI as used by districts has been seen, like not in terms of how can a teacher create lesson plans, how can they better communicate with the home environment, and there is a need to do this with a consideration, and you hear this from a lot of entities. One of the ones that I follow closely is the EdSafe AI Alliance, which is looking at how do we instrument AI, but consider the potential harms, including the biases that exist in a lot of these large language models because they rely on data that exists on the internet, and a lot of times that data is not equitable in terms of how it perceives people from different backgrounds and races and ethnic origins, right? So we want to make sure that we are careful that we use this new technology in a meaningful way and for what it can power, but also be considerate that it's not perfect and that it's evolving and it's something that we want to be very considerate of as we adopt it into our practices. We have seen, I think, 7 states so far in the U.S. adopt early policies around ed tech, and I think we're going to see a lot more coming soon. We've also seen the Department of Education at the federal level actively look to put some guardrails, which are really important around AI, into practice or consideration so that we make the right decisions of how we use this new technology to really move the needle in terms of outcomes.
Great. And you spoke about a very important topic about safeguarding, putting guardrails. So I think that's great. You also, I think one of the things with the emergence of AI is the ability to spot and ability to identify students who need additional support, students who have learning difficulties. What are your take on that? Like, how can AI enable that?
Similar to the system that I talked about, our personalized mastery learning system, the opportunity with AI around that is, as you consider measurement and there's a lot of research and theory behind how I believe AI companies or companies that are using AI in their ed tech product should consider. So similar to what we did, you stand on top of the body of fantastic research that exists, and then you think about, now I have a new technology. How might this technology help me? And that help can be a lot of different ways. Like, how do I communicate to a teacher that a student may need additional help or that is struggling? And potentially a solution may have some sort of diagnostic that tells you that it could be something that is a disability that needs to be considered, and look at X, Y, and Z in terms of how you handle it. Or it could be something like being able to address for a teacher trying to to communicate with a parent or caregiver at home that has a different heritage language or is more comfortable with a different heritage language, how they might use AI to take what a standard report is sent home about a disability to do one in the parent's language.
Great. I think that personally is very, very, I think, very refreshing to see, for people with different kind of learning abilities to be able to be identified and then given their own path to succeed. I think that's fantastic. Um, Looking at a little bit of in the future, what trends or what possibilities are you most excited about when it comes to AI, adaptive learning, and the future of education?
I'm really excited about one of the trends that we are definitely pushing to make into a movement is around evidence. And as much as people are focusing on tools, our work as ed tech developers has to be about improving outcomes for the students that we serve, and of course their teachers and their parents who are with us on this journey. And to me, promoting that evidence is evidence and outcomes and ensuring that we're effective is really important. And I'm excited about some initiatives that are starting. One by the Southern Education Foundation around outcome-based contracting, and in a nutshell, what that is that contracts are based where a developer like ourselves has some skin in the game in terms of a certain amount of our our payment is contingent about on actually achieving the outcomes that our products promise. To me, that seems like a right way to align interest between developers like ourselves and the districts. That's one example of something I'm excited about. Another example that I'm excited about is that there's just a national movement around early childhood education, and having come in, and given this is an area we focused on, we think it's well beyond time, and there's great evidence to show that investing in our kids from birth through when they're 8 years old it has the largest return. James Heckman, Professor James Heckman at University of Chicago, has done some wonderful research. That return on investment is between 13 and 17% for every dollar spent returns over the lifetime of the student. And with AI technology, there's such an opportunity to ensure more of our students are ready for school, and that when they get to school, they can thrive. And the parents understand what they can do in addition to what's happening at school to help the child along in their journey. The third part of this is I do really believe that AI and technology has a potential to do what is really to move our systems and our institutional systems around education to what Todd Rose in his book End of Average described as a system that is standardized based on time and seat to one that recognizes the needs of every student, and to be able to personalize education as we've talked about, and to ensure that we are providing to each student what they need to be successful, not only academically, but in life.
Yeah, this the book, The End of Average, is today's the second time in the last 4 days that somebody's recommended that somebody's spoken about that book. I've already purchased it. I'm going to read that. I hear that it's amazing, especially when it comes to education and student journey. I'm definitely going to follow the outcome based contracting because it does seem to be a step in the right direction. I'm sure there's a lot of work that's going to go build this, but it's definitely exciting to see the right measures being rewarded. So thank you for sharing that. Lastly, the last segment, Sunil, we would like to focus on you as Chief Innovation Officer at Age of Learning, as somebody in the edtech space. A lot of edtech companies today are trying to incorporate AI and new age technology into their products. Based on your experience, what would be your recommendation to some of your peers, and what kind of challenges can they encounter? How do they overcome that? And kind of create products using technology as a backbone to deliver outcomes.
That's a great question, and one that we think about all the time. The AI has a lot of multiple purposes, and you targeted really the most important is that it is a tool, as is any ed tech product, and that it's a tool for ensuring we help our systems, our school districts, our parents create better outcomes for their children. And if you start there as your theory of change, and you find your theory of change in terms of what do I want to do with my product that's really going to impact learning. And for us with my Math Academy, my Reading Academy, it was we already have 17 ESSA aligned studies that show that our product is effective at as moving the needle. And we're doing this in a way that works in the constraints of a classroom that is 15 to 20 minutes, about 3 to 4 times a week, and we can get gains with our products doing that. I think any ed tech developer, you want to think about where is your product going to be used, what impact is it going to have, how are you going to measure that impact, and in a way that is valid and relevant, and that a study basis and S alignment is a way to do that. And I think the other thing that is really interesting about the ed tech tools is being able to use them now for understanding what research is out there for a problem that you're trying to solve. So, looking at there's tools now to say I can use AI to say provide me. Let's say I'm trying to solve the topic of student motivation. All right. Well, what is the research basis on student motivation? What else has been done at our great universities across the country already by professors who have really looked at this problem? And then, all right, this is what the research says. Well, how might I incorporate that research into my product? How will that make it more effective? And then how could I test that in terms of evidence of that actual research being effective in the way I've deployed it in my product? And you continue to think about how do you use AI and AI technology to iterate on your product, to make it better, to make it more effective, and ultimately to deliver hopefully what is a golden age of education, because we have been able to shift our systems into something that delivers learning gains for all of our students, not just a small percentage of them.
That's fantastic. So if I summarize, you basically look at the research for the problem that you're trying to solve, and use technology as a backbone to deliver impact. I think in one of the shows that I saw, that I heard, you said that you're in a business of creating impact. So I think that's where think about impact and how what you do create an impact. This has been great. Thank you so much, Sunil. Before we wrap up, is there anything that I have not asked you and something like that you'd want to share?
You nailed it. We are in the business of impact. We're in the business of outcomes, and products like My Math Academy, My Reading Academy. We feel like we're creating something that is leading edge to drive those outcomes that our students, our teachers, and our parents deserve. And frankly, what we're going to need to really prepare ourselves for the AI future ahead for all of us. So I'll just leave you with that.
Thank you so much, Sunil. Thank you for coming to our show. Where could folks find you if they have to connect with you?
Well, please feel free to reach out to us at. You can find me at Age of Learning. I'm Sunil at ageoflearning.com. And, please check out our website to learn more about our products. And that's just ageoflearning.com.
All right. Thank you so much, Sunil. You really educated us about creating research-driven products that can deliver maximum impact using evidence. So thank you so much. And we'll stay in touch.
Thank you. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
Thanks.